Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. I just read the most, I think the best book on biotech ever by Nathan Vardy, written in 2023. I'm trying to get him on the show. I'm also trying to get a lot of the characters from this book on the show to talk about their careers. There's a lot of interesting characters in here. Um, Nathan Vardy is a financial writer, so there's a lot of like investment stuff here. I know there's a good amount of my audience is an investment community, but the biotech, I think we're in a new era of biotech, 2025 and on. And this book focuses on the biotech boom during 2011 to 2017, but it really is about a life-saving cancer drug. The characters in this book are so interesting. I did an entire profile on Wayne Rothbaum, who's the best biotech investor of all time by far. And he's so hard to get information on because he's so secretive. There's almost not even any pictures of him online. They became a billionaire, but his worst investment ever was in this book. He still made a couple hundred million off of it, but he could have made almost a billion. He sold too soon. There are spoilers. There's going to be a bunch of spoiler alerts here. They're real events.
So let's get right into it. In the early 2000s, Pharmacyclics was a failing biotech company. It had tried and failed to get 3 drugs through FDA approval. Investors had lost faith. But in 2006, CEO Richard Miller made a long shot move. He bought a batch of discarded compounds from Celera Genomics for just $6.6 million. One of them, a Bruton's tyrosine kinase, BTK inhibitor, looked like junk to most. It wasn't even patented. That molecule would become ibrutinib, later branded as Imbruvica. Enter Bob Duggan. Duggan, a wealthy entrepreneur and devoted Scientologist, had made millions selling everything from cookies to tech. In 2004, he began quietly investing in Pharmacyclics stock when it was trading at around 50 cents a share. He eventually took over as CEO in 2008, ousting Miller. Dugan had zero biotech background, but he had a mission. His son had died of brain cancer, and he wanted to change the future of cancer care. Under Dugan's leadership, ibrutinib became the company's sole focus. By 2010, Pharmacyclics launched its first human trial, targeting patients with advanced mantle cell lymphoma and CLL. The results were astonishing. Lymph nodes shrank, blood counts normalized, and patients who had failed chemotherapy started going into remission. But success bred tension. Key players inside the company, including Dr. Ahmed Hamdi, Chief Medical Officer, and Raquel Izumi, a top clinical trial strategist, began clashing with Dugan over the direction and control of the program. In 2011, during a heated moment at an oncology conference, a disagreement escalated into a public shouting match. Weeks later, Dugan abruptly fired both Hamdi and Izumi. They had helped bring ibrutinib to life, and now they were out. But they weren't done. After being fired, Dr. Ahmed Hamdi wasn't ready to retire. Alongside Raquel Izumi, he decided to build something new, not just a comeback, but a competitor. Enter Acerta Pharma. With seed money from Wayne Rothbaum, a reclusive hedge fund trader from New York, Hamdi and Izumi founded Acerta in 2012. Rothbaum had made a killing on Pharmacyclics stock, but resented how the company had been managed. He was ready to back a rival, one that could beat ibrutinib at its own game. The team secured an obscure BTK inhibitor from Merck called ACP-196, later named acalabrutinib. Merck had shelved it. Acerta bought it for just $1,000. Their mission? Create a cleaner, more selective BTK inhibitor with fewer side effects than ibrutinib, especially the cardiac issues some patients had faced. Acerta ran lean, no PR, no splashy board, just Hamdi, Izumi, and a tiny team, including Dutch scientists Merck had laid off. Rothbaum funded the whole thing himself, kept the operation secret, and reviewed clinical data personally. In 2014, Acerta dosed its first patient, a Dutch woman with late-stage CLL. Within weeks, her tumors shrank dramatically. Blood transfusions stopped. Doctors were stunned. It was the proof they needed. By 2015, the word was out. Acalabrutinib was working, and Acerta, once a garage startup, had something big pharma wanted. Merck came back with a $2 billion offer. Rothbaum said no. Then came AstraZeneca, desperate for a cancer win after a failed merger. CEO Pascal Soriot made a bold offer, $4 billion for 55% of Acerta, with another $3 billion contingent on FDA approval. Valuation $7 billion. By 2017, acalabrutinib, now branded Calquence, earned FDA approval for mantle cell lymphoma. Head-to-head trials with Imbruvica showed similar effectiveness, but Calquence had fewer side effects. Within a few years, Calquence overtook ibrutinib as the preferred frontline therapy for CLL. Meanwhile, back at Pharmacyclics, the success of ibrutinib had already paid off in a massive way. In 2015, AbbVie acquired Pharmacyclics for a jaw-dropping $21 billion. Dugan, who had invested about $50 million of his own money, walked away with $3.5 billion personally. It was one of the most lucrative trades in biotech history. And yet many of the people who made the drugs happen, scientists, clinicians, and trial staff, didn't see those billions. Dr. Hamdi and Raquel Izumi made money in the AstraZeneca deal, yes, but it was nothing compared to the windfalls reaped by Rothbaum and the bankers. Hamdi had helped bring two BTK inhibitors to market, but got little of the spotlight or spoils. Patients too were left out of the money, but their courage was at the heart of this story. One trial participant flew across the country just to get ibrutinib. Another patient, a physician with leukemia, carried his acalabrutinib pills in his pocket on a plane, unwilling to risk losing them. The drugs worked. They lived. They watched the headlines as billionaires were minted, all while paying $130,000 per year for access. This is where Vardy's title earns its weight, for blood and money isn't just a metaphor. The science is real. The impact is real. So are the questions about who gets paid, who gets left out, and how much a cure should cost. For blood and money isn't just about drugs, it's about systems and people. It's about a business where capital often earns more than courage, where labor builds the cure but capital owns the company. The book spotlights forgotten heroes, the scientists at Ohio State, MD Anderson, and Dutch labs who ran trials, collected data, and advised protocols. They didn't make headlines. They didn't get equity. But without them, ibrutinib and acalabrutinib wouldn't exist. It also shows how much modern drug development now relies on the whims of billionaires. If Bob Duggan or Wayne Rothbaum hadn't written checks, these drugs may have never seen the light of day. So is that a feature of the system or a bug? Vardy doesn't offer answers, he simply lays the story bare. What's undeniable is this. BTK inhibitors have changed the world for patients with CLL and related cancers. Tens of thousands of lives have been extended, some likely saved. And it all started with forgotten molecules, personal grudges, and an enormous amount of risk. It's a story of redemption and revenge, of genius and greed, and of medicine that, despite everything, works.
So just in case it's not obvious by now, I highly recommend this book. Nathan Vardy, I hope you come on the pod. I'm going to try to get some of the characters. What's really cool about this, not only is it showing like the battle for the money and the bags and the amount of work it takes to actually get a drug approved, and the fact that both of these companies went against the odds because it's something like only 20% of drugs actually make it through clinical trials and get approved. The ones that at least start a phase two. So they're like they're two for two. And the crazy thing is, a lot of these people, the main characters I mentioned, so Bob Dugan, he's still at it in his 80s. He's the CEO of Summit Therapeutics. They've been in the news lately. They took an IP from China. They try to replicate the data in the US. They have some promise. He's doing non-small cell lung cancer with Summit. And you know what's crazy? Him and Rothbaum are still battling it out because Iovance, which is actually a company I'm invested in, not financial advice, do your own due diligence. He's on the board of directors, Wayne Rothbaum, and presumably a very large investor. They started out with refractory melanoma, but one of their indications coming up, I'm actually waiting for this potential catalyst in 2025 is, you guessed it, non-small cell lung cancer. And then the other characters, Hamdi, Izumi, they're both CEOs respectively of different biotechs. I just looked them up on LinkedIn. So Hamdi is the CEO at Vincirx Pharma, and then Raquel Izumi is the acting CEO at Vincirx Pharma. Uh, I mean, this is great. This is a great story, and it's to be continued because if you follow these people, and I'm going to try to get them on the podcast, go get it. The spoilers, who cares about the spoilers? This is already history. The This video does this book no justice. You gotta read it yourself. I have it on the actual physical copy and I have it on Audible, and I've listened to it now 3 times and I've read it once. So go get it. Hopefully you liked it. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye bye.